What's the most memorable gaming experience you've ever had? Was it an immersive story that deeply impacted you? Was it exciting gameplay mechanics that kept you hooked for hours on end? And did you perhaps share these moments with someone else? Did you have that one game, or maybe even multiple games, that you played for hours on end with someone close to you? Video games are an incredibly versatile form of media. They can be punishingly difficult ways to challenge the player, or they can be an incredibly peaceful and relaxing way to unwind. They can be a wonderful, personal, intimate experience while playing solo, but they also serve as an excellent social experience and a way to hang out with your friends and/or family, especially with online play as such a prevalent option nowadays.
It's the hardest weapon. You guys are all using assault rifles, and I'm using a shotgun. What are you talking about?
You're trash.
You're trash. My mom just got me this game last week.
Yeah,
Sounds like a personal problem.
It took you a week to get level 26. Are you serious?
But I feel like recently it's become much more uncommon for games to feature cooperative options. It's a lot harder to find quality 2, 3, or 4-player games that you can play with others in the comfort of your own home, even though the social aspect of gaming is often incredibly important for enhancing the experience of many games, as overcoming challenges with someone who shares the same level of excitement as you can be very rewarding and cathartic. And multiplayer titles serve as a great gateway for friends and family who may not be big gamers, yet they can pick up this title specifically as a method of hanging out together. We've all known at least a handful of people who never played video games, but were frothing at the mouth at the mere mention of Wii Sports. And it's these types of social experiences surrounding gaming that certainly shouldn't be forgotten anytime soon, despite it becoming somewhat harder to find nowadays. So, this is why. So let me just get this out there. Most of my favorite games are single-player, story-driven adventures. Many of my favorite gaming experiences have occurred with me alone in a dark room, completely engaged in a game that I've got all to myself. It can be a very personal experience. And as someone with a limited social battery, I cherish the time I have with these games where I can sit down, by myself, at the end of a long day and just unwind. But you know what game series I've played more than any other because of its endless replayability and fun factor? It's not Kingdom Hearts, it's Super Smash Bros. I have put countless hours into these games, always playing with my friends, doing 1v1s, 2v2s, insanely chaotic 8-player free-for-all matches, co-op Subspace Emissary and Brawl, rest in peace, even Smash Tour and Smash Bros for Wii U, on top of all the various custom rule sets my friends and I would make up if we ever got bored. I have played this game more than any other because it's a social experience, and my friends and I are still, to this day, able to use this game as just a way of hanging out. Sure, it's a super fun game, and we get very competitive with it, but it's not really the game itself that keeps us playing. I mean, you sure as hell won't catch me playing this game solo against CPUs, or even online against people who are extra competitive, and frankly, unfun for me to play with personally. That's okay if you enjoy those methods of play, I'm not knocking them entirely, but playing sitting next to the people that you're closest with, doing a bit of trash talking as you all enjoy each other's company and just have a good time, is my preferred way to play this type of game. And that goes for any competitive but fun type of game. I will always, 10 times out of 10, prefer to sit right beside the people that I know while playing games like Mario Kart, Mario Party, Overcooked, Mortal Kombat, Smash Bros, and really any sort of games in that realm that also have an online option. I want to feel the energy of the room when I play with people I know. And I want to be able to look my best friend in the eyes as I curse his family for passing me at the last second on the final lap of Coconut Mall. Though I'm not knocking the option for online play as a backup. I understand that life happens, and unfortunately not everyone has the time or resources to get together and play games every week. Therefore, online capabilities can be a wonderful solution for friends who may live very far from one another, which serves as a wonderful way for 2 or more friends to hang out and engage in this activity even though they're physically unable to get together. And that's what video games often are for me and many others, a way to hang out. During COVID, while quarantined from the outside world, my best friend and I started playing this Pokemon knockoff called Temtem. The game wasn't even that amazing, but we had a really good time with it because we were able to play through the entire game together. working as a team during combat as each battle would become a double battle. A multiplayer Pokemon game with online functionality that allows us to progress through the entire story as a duo was something we had been asking for basically our entire lives. So using that as a way to hang out and chat casually while also coordinating our attacks in battle, as well as our team builds for type advantages, all served as a very memorable way to stay connected during an otherwise very uncertain time in our lives. We also spent a fair amount of time around then, and even before that, playing lots of Minecraft as a way to socialize. Typically it would be about 3 or 4 of us in a world working together to build our own little village. My one buddy would do lots of strip mining and farming. I would spend way too long on some pretty insane architecture. But our other friend would typically finish his house very quickly, nab himself a pet dog and or cow, and he would just walk around and do nothing while chatting with us in the PlayStation party. And I never understood how he could play like that. I mean, while the rest of us are taking on massive projects, he's just wandering around the Minecraft world, just doing random shit with no objective, because his objective was done after an hour or 2. But then, one day he explained it to me. To him, Minecraft was just a way to hang out and talk. He didn't care what he got done in the game, because to him, it was basically just a virtual chat room where the only thing that really mattered was that he was spending time with his friends. And that really changed my perspective on what cooperative gaming can really be. It's about so much more than just the game itself. Social interaction while gaming is the most important element for so many games. Game & Wario on WiiU has a rather forgettable and somewhat unfun single-player mode. Yet, you switch to the multiplayer minigames, and suddenly it becomes one of the best party games out there. And they're all very simple. Find which one of these little guys is your thief friend. Guess what the hell your friend is drawing. Launch the frongs. But they all really prompt interaction between your party, which makes for a great time. Overcooked is a game that you can play solo, but why would you ever do that when it's so much more fun to be yelling back and forth at your partner, trying to get orders together in a timely manner while trying to keep the place from burning down like you're in a real-life episode of Hell's Kitchen.
I can't take any more. I can't do this. I cannot do this any fucking more. I can't do it anymore!
Or some titles, like many of the Mario games, have immense value as both single-player and multiplayer experiences, as playing with more players serves for a lot more chaos, since players will likely be bumping into each other, jumping off each other's heads, and leaving you in the dust if you can't keep up. So this may leave you laughing a lot with the other players, or you could just be left incredibly frustrated, or maybe a little bit of both. While in single player, you can go as fast or as slow as you like without having to worry about other players being in your way. But both are incredibly valuable ways to play. Yet they're 2 very different experiences which serve for lots of gameplay variety. Which means you may want to go back and play through with friends or family after you beat it solo. Or vice versa. CUPHEAD is one like that as well, which is a perfect single player experience, yet the designers were so wonderful as to add a 2-player option, which changes the game up quite a bit. You now have 2 players that both have to focus on your damage output to a boss, as they now have double the health that they would in single player. Additionally, you can now revive each other by parrying the ghost of your fallen teammate, which is a mechanic exclusive to co-op and is crucial for your survival, as alone, you likely won't be dealing nearly enough damage. Yet this just adds another objective to keep track of on screen mid-gameplay, an element you may not be used to on solo mode, which makes the game feel just that much more fresh while playing with another player. Did this game have to include a co-op mode with this additional well-thought-out mechanic and great balancing? No, they didn't. But this option just adds for so much gameplay variety, and it broadens the scope of the game's player base by reaching out to players who may not be enough of a pro gamer to take on tough games themselves, yet they may be confident enough to play with a partner, which may help them to exercise their video game difficulty muscle, so that they may improve enough to be able to come back and beat it by themselves later. And this is all without having to sacrifice the integrity of the game, which is intended to be a very difficult and challenging experience for 1 or even 2 players. It's great. Yet, many games that could have co-op simply don't. And often at times, I'm left scratching my head as to why not? I understand that such features require extra dev time, and the game has to be able to render everything at once, twice on 2 separate split screens, although online play does remove that second problem. But like, you're telling me that Mario Odyssey and Astro Bot both really had to be single-player only games? Platformers are basically the perfect genre for co-op. They're the ideal gateway into gaming as they're not all that difficult to learn mechanically. But you can still get good at them. They're a sort of easy to pick up, difficult to master type of thing. These are often the types of experiences where people who wouldn't typically seek out this type of game are often still excited by the idea of playing it with someone else. I played through all of the new Super Mario Bros. Games with my younger sister, who was always asking me to play them with her, even though she never wanted to play by herself. But suddenly they were so much more fun to her when we got to enjoy them together. Yet she probably never would have even been drawn to them without the co-op option. Or there's Pokemon, the perfect type of game to be a 2 to 4 player adventure, since the anime is always about groups of trainers traveling and working together with their unique sets of Pokemon. Yet for some reason, the Pokemon company just refuses to do anything new and interesting, and they'd rather just sue the companies that do. Awesome. But don't tell me that Pokemon couldn't handle 4 players in its campaign, because Baldur's Gate 3, one of the largest, most impressive RPGs of all time, has full-on 4-player functionality through its entire campaign. You can even play split screen. It's incredible. Like, if you can't get a full D&D group together, at least play through Baldur's Gate 3 and get the video game version of that experience, because it's just so much fun. And now, I will say, there's nothing wrong with the developer wanting to curate their experience to a specific player, rather than a group or duo. That's absolutely their right. And clearly, that's just what they were going for with Mario Odyssey and Astro Bot. It just feels like some games are missing it. I mean, you're telling me every single LEGO game is built around the co-op experience, but we draw the line at Lego City Undercover? No, that game just had to cater to the premier single-player experience. And I get that Mario games have been doing the single-player format for a good handful of their 3D games since the beginning with Mario 64. But even though that game couldn't likely handle a 2-player mode, they absolutely had the opportunity to add one when the game was remade on the DS, since each player would have had their own device and screen. Perfect for cooperative play, but instead they just added a half-assed versus mode. Or nowadays, remakes will just remove co-op features. Like how in the original PSP release of Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep, we had the Mirage Arena, an amazing multiplayer mode where you could customize your character and play with up to 3 other players and take on all sorts of combat challenges. And even some other bullshit. And in the remake, they kept this mode, but it's single player only, which feels super weird. Like, as a new player, I wouldn't have a fucking clue what the point of this place is. And I get that keeping the cooperative mode would require them to keep up servers for online play, but shit, just include the option for LAN play, and I'll bring my whole ass PS5 and a TV over to my buddy's house like it's just a bigger PSP. I get that may sound ridiculous, but I've spent countless hours playing multiplayer games like that anyway. Playing COD Zombies or OG Overwatch next to my friends with multiple consoles and TVs set up beside one another. All playing online while absolutely taking over the internet, ruining any chance my friends' parents had at watching The Office on Netflix that night.
No! God!
Dude!
No!
Dude, revive me! Dude, I have ray gun! I have ray gun! Revive me, bro!
And it's online multiplayer games like that, which you will also never find me playing alone. I certainly enjoy some solo COD Zombies, but any other form of multiplayer game, at least for me personally, is always best experienced when you're coordinating with your team. Playing OG Overwatch with a full set of 6 people that you know was a hard event to get together, but oh my god, when it happened, it was magical. Every player fulfilling their designated role, swapping on the fly in the ways that best supported the team, based on the strengths and weaknesses of each individual player. Everyone making callouts, coordinating, and working together like a well-oiled machine, while still joking around and having a damn good time. I put countless hours into that game back in the day, and while I simply don't have the time to go into how that game has become a pathetically aimless, greed-driven shell of its former self, which should be ashamed to exist, it's important to note that multiplayer games, even shooters, also have their place in the co-op gaming landscape. And while I typically don't enjoy playing those games solo, playing alongside people you know and coordinating your strategies with them is just like any other co-op experience I've had. While playing Mario, Overcooked, and CUPHEAD, I'm always at the same level of kinda yelling, kinda coordinating that I am while playing Call of Duty. It's great. And online multiplayer has become somewhat of the focus for recent developers, rather than couch co-op. It's just a lot harder to do split screen for these massive HD titles anymore. It's not like back in the day where you could go to the store and over half the games on the shelf had co-op options. The entire SNES, PS1, and PS2 eras were full of these titles. This was back when video games were viewed as a much more leisurely sort of activity. Pre-Last of Us and the rise of single-player story-driven games were often viewed as just a way of having fun, often with friends and family. And that's not even to say that many of those games were good, but they weren't made so much better by including their cooperative elements. Narnia: The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe on PS2 went from being a 5 out of 10 to a 9 out of 10 whenever I got to play with my cousin. Because then it became about who mained what character, and, based on that, who we wanted to upgrade. You think I'd be having the same dialogue with myself internally if I wasn't playing with him? But when it was him and I together, I sure as hell made sure that he knew that I was a Lucy main with her wolf tame ability. Obviously. Then there were the actually good titles with co-op options that we played. I mean, Star Wars Battlefront 2 has endless replayability on its own with all of the different modes, maps, factions, and combat units available, including its hero and villain characters. But then you add the cooperative Galactic Conquest mode, which functioned like a board game where you tried to take over the galaxy by fighting over each planet, and suddenly you've got a perfect game with beyond endless replayability. Compare that to Battlefront 2 2017, a game that I actually quite enjoyed playing online with my brother, but this game has basically no split-screen game modes, just a very basic and watered-down arcade mode, which doesn't even remotely match the scale of what an actual online match feels like, or what an OG Battlefront 2 match feels like. This arcade mode feels like such an afterthought, with very small maps and limited options. So, of course there's nothing even remotely close to the level of creativity and fun that came with the OG's Galactic Conquest. And that's the problem. Modern developers rarely care about couch co-op options anymore. I honestly feel like the developers only tacked on this 2-player mode because the original was kinda built around it. At least the LEGO games have consistently been reliable 2-player titles. Simple yet effective puzzle action games are perfect as a 2-player experience. You'll always have to work together to complete each level, but pretty much anyone can play them. They're another perfect gateway into gaming for new players, young and old, who may want to get into gaming but would prefer the social experience of playing alongside a friend or family member, who can help them to progress in a game that may be more frustrating than fun for them as a solo experience. And the licensing of Star Wars, Marvel, Pirates of the Caribbean, the best one in my opinion, is a great way of catching the eye of potentially new players. It was all over the first time I saw the original LEGO Star Wars on PS2 sitting on a shelf in Target. And I really got into it because it was often my family members that would play it with me. But while it is more difficult nowadays to find AAA titles that feature co-op, there is one game in recent years that still sticks out to me as the perfect 2-player game that is a must-play for any couples or best friends that want a fun, engaging, and incredibly rewarding gaming experience that can be played online or side by side on the couch at home. And that game is It Takes Two. This is a very rare sort of game in that it can only be played with 2 players, as the entirety of the story and gameplay is designed around cooperation. As this couple struggles to fix their relationship, they must work together to solve the puzzles and challenges of each level, and each individual area is designed around each character, Cody and May, having their own unique mechanics that interact perfectly with one another. Such as in the first level, when Cody has these nails he can throw, which May can swing from with her hammer. And you must use these mechanics as a team in order to progress in this entirely cooperative experience. And this also just makes for great gameplay variety, since each character has their own mechanics for every single level. You get past the hammer and nail section, and they throw those mechanics away for a completely new set of abilities, and you never see the previous mechanics again. But you can then go back and replay the game as the other character and get a very different experience with their own mechanics. Also, even though this is a team game, you're able to find collectible minigames that have you competing against one another, sprinkling in a perfect little bit of competition in this otherwise team-based game. It is so much fun, and the story isn't bad either, as you and your partner are placed directly into the shoes of these two protagonists. More games should absolutely be like this, designed around cooperation and a story that's meant to be shared. I love story games, but it's rare that you can play through an entire narrative-based game with a partner. Though we were really blessed with Baldur's Gate 3 co-op. Seriously, that shit is great. Although, I will say, even though there are some single-player games I wish I could play with a friend, there's nothing stopping you from playing through single-player titles with someone else who may be interested in just enjoying your company, watching you play while enjoying the narrative, or even taking turns, swapping each time you reach a new chapter, or perhaps every time one of you dies in-game. In my last video, I told the story of how I used to play through the Kingdom Hearts games with my mom when I was very young. And while I was very engaged by the gameplay and story of those games, it remains such an impactful and memorable experience because I was sharing it with my mother. And frankly, I didn't know a single person back then who even knew what Kingdom Hearts was. So I had no one to talk to about it. Yet, my mom was there with me through all of it. So I knew that she at least kinda knew what the hell I was talking about while yapping about this wild series. And yeah, it would be cool if those games had a 2-player mode. Shit, I didn't even play as Donald or Goofy. Let me drop in and out like a Lego game. But its single-player structure doesn't mean that I wasn't still playing it with my mom. And in recent years, I've been doing something very similar. My best friend and I, my Temtem and Minecraft Wanderer friend, have been hanging out with the intention of playing through single-player games together. I introduced him to the Kingdom Hearts series, so he played through KH1, 2, and Birth by Sleep while I watched. And he introduced me to his favorite series, Paper Mario, which he watched me play through. Being able to share your favorite games with someone in this way is an incredibly fun experience, as you're, in a way, getting to experience it again for the first time through them, as they react for the first time to the gameplay and story moments that you're otherwise very familiar with. And the whole time we just sit around and chat about life, movies, games, and whatever the hell else. It's amazing. And I've done this plenty of times with people who are close to me who aren't even interested in playing single-player games, but really want to experience the story. Sure, they could just watch the cutscenes or even a Let's Player online, but there's still something to be said about being present for the gameplay itself, which adds to the experience. And playing through it alongside a friend or family member is still a cooperative experience. I often love to have company when I play single-player games, so they can give me feedback on my gameplay and point out collectibles and materials that I'm inevitably going to walk right past because I'm just not paying attention. And if it's a new game that I've never played before, we get to experience the story together, with an equal level of immersion, despite half of the party not being that big of a gamer. It's a wonderful shared experience and a great alternative if you don't have the options for cooperative games. And that's what it's really all about. Having a fun way to spend time with the people you care about. Video games, in any format or genre, can be a wonderful social experience that brings people together, gamers and non-gamers alike. And while online games are still a good option for people that can't physically get together, there is still nothing quite like sitting down beside your friends or family members and getting invested in a game that brings out the energy and excitement within everyone. Whether it's a party game, co-op team game, or even a single-player one that you're sharing with one another, at the end of the day, you've got a wonderful interactive medium that has brought you together. And I know I said it's harder to find these types of experiences nowadays, but the truth is, there are still some solid titles releasing here and there to keep your eyes open for. The new Mario Party Jamboree is a great 4-player experience, for casual and competitive players alike. Helldivers 2 blew up out of nowhere and received all sorts of positive attention and reviews. And when all else fails, you can always go back to the games you grew up playing and share this experience with those who haven't yet. maybe a close friend, a younger sibling, or perhaps even your own children can now partake in the shared experience of gaming with you, the way that I did with my mom as a kid. But at the end of the day, you should never stop sharing the games that you love with the ones you love. Because please, let me know in the comments below what your most memorable gaming experience was. And did you share those moments with someone else? If you enjoyed this video, perhaps consider checking out some of my other videos. Linked here, I've got playlists of all of my video essays, boss rankings, and meme-type videos, if that's more your speed. I've got plenty more videos in the works, but in the meantime, please let me know if there's anything else you'd like to hear me talk about next. Until then, thank you very much for watching.